unexpected savior. The rain hammered against Olivia Reed's windshield with such force she could barely see the winding mountain road ahead. Her rented sedan struggled against the rising water as lightning split the sky, illuminating the dense forest on either side. She was miles from the nearest town. Her GPS had lost signal 20 minutes ago, and her phone battery had died shortly after. Just perfect, she muttered, gripping the steering wheel tighter as the car hydroplaned slightly. She'd come to the Blue Ridge Mountains to photograph the elusive red wolf for her wildlife conservation series. Now, instead of capturing rare images, she might become a cautionary tale about stubborn photographers who ignored weather warnings. The sedan lurched violently as it hit something beneath the water. A sickening crack echoed through the chassis, and the car began to drift sideways toward the edge of the road where a steep embankment dropped into darkness. Olivia's heart pounded against her ribs. She turned the key desperately, but the engine only gave a pathetic whine before going silent. Water was seeping in through the bottom of the doors now. She needed to get out, but the current outside might sweep her away. Just as panic began to overtake her, headlights cut through the darkness behind her. A mud-spattered truck pulled alongside, its wheels high enough to navigate the flooded road. A man jumped out, water immediately soaking him to the knees as he fought the current to reach her door. "Are you hurt?" he shouted over the storm when she cracked her window. "No, just stuck," Olivia called back. "The car hit something." "You need to get out. This road floods fast, and that embankment won't hold if more debris comes down." He gestured urgently to the hillside above them, where water was carving new paths through the soil. Olivia grabbed her camera bag and emergency backpack, then pushed the door open against the pressure of the water. The man caught her as she stumbled, his grip steady and strong. "I'm Marcus," he said, guiding her toward his truck. "Visiting or local?" "Visiting. Olivia Reed. I'm a wildlife photographer," she managed through chattering teeth. The rain was bone-chillingly cold, and her light jacket offered little protection. Once inside his truck, Marcus cranked the heat and handed her a thermos. "Coffee. Should still be warm." Olivia accepted it gratefully, noticing his calloused hands and the wood shavings clinging to the cuffs of his flannel shirt. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead, and his eyes, a striking hazel, carried a quiet watchfulness that seemed at odds with his rugged appearance. "You're not from around here either," she observed, the coffee warming her from the inside. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "What gave me away? Locals would have known better than to take this road during the spring floods," she said, returning his smile. "I grew up here, actually. Just been gone a while." He shifted the truck into gear and carefully navigated away from the edge. "I know. A place up ahead where we can wait out the worst of it. Pine Haven Lodge. My friend Eamon runs it. It's nothing fancy, but it's dry." As they drove, Olivia noticed how Marcus handled the treacherous road with practiced ease, anticipating washouts and fallen branches. He didn't speak much, but when he did, his voice had a gentle timbre that somehow made her feel safer than she had any right to feel in the middle of a mountain deluge with a stranger. The lodge appeared through the rain-soaked darkness, a sturdy, two-story building with warm light spilling from its windows. By the time they reached it, the storm had intensified, turning the world outside into a chaotic blur of wind and water. Inside, a fire crackled in a stone hearth, and the few occupants barely looked up as Marcus ushered her in. A barrel-chested man with a salt and pepper beard approached them, concern etched on his weathered face. "Marcus, didn't expect to see you out in this mess. Who's your friend?" "Eamon, this is Olivia. Her car got stranded on Ridgeline Road. Olivia, this is Eamon Fletcher, the finest lodge keeper in 3 counties. The older man's eyebrows shot up. "Ridgeline? During a flood? You're lucky Marcus found you, miss. That road becomes a river this time of year." "I'm beginning to understand that," Olivia said ruefully, looking down at her dripping clothes. Is there any chance you have a room available just until the storm passes? For you? Of course. Eamon glanced at Marcus with an expression Olivia couldn't quite decipher. Any friend of Marcus is welcome here. As Eamon went to prepare a room, Olivia turned to thank her rescuer, noticing for the first time the simple but exquisite craftsmanship of his watch, seemingly at odds with his otherwise modest appearance. "Thank you," she said. "I don't know. What would have happened if you hadn't come along?" Marcus shrugged, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "Sometimes we all need someone to pull us back from the edge," he said quietly. "I'm just glad I was there." Little did Olivia know that this chance encounter in the storm would change the course of her life, or that the humble carpenter who'd rescued her held secrets that would soon challenge everything she thought she knew about wealth, worth, and what truly mattered. Small-town mysteries. Morning light filtered through the pine trees surrounding Pine Haven Lodge, transforming yesterday's threatening landscape into a postcard-worthy scene. Olivia stood on the small balcony of her room, camera in hand, capturing the aftermath of the storm. Mist rising from the valley, droplets clinging to leaves, a double rainbow arcing over the distant peaks. A knock at her door pulled her attention away from the view. It was Eamon, holding a tray with coffee and freshly baked scones. "Thought you might need this after last night's excitement," he said, setting the tray down on a small table. "The mechanic's been to see your car. It's not good news, I'm afraid." Olivia sighed. "How bad?" "Axle's damaged, and there's water in places water shouldn't be. Thomas says it'll be at least 5 days for parts to come in from Asheville." 5 days. Olivia ran through her schedule mentally. Her next assignment wasn't for 2 weeks, but being stranded hadn't been part of her plan. "Is there anywhere in town I could rent another vehicle? I came here to photograph wildlife, and I hate losing the opportunity." Eamon scratched his beard, thoughtfully. "Rental places are down in the valley about 40 miles, but—" He hesitated. "You might want to talk to Marcus. He knows these mountains better than anyone, and I happen to know he's free this week." "The man who rescued me? He's a guide?" "Not officially. He's a carpenter, builds custom furniture that sells for more than my truck. But he grew up tracking and hiking these ridges. If anyone can help you find those wolves you're after, it's him." An hour later, Olivia found herself walking through the small town of Pine Ridge. It was a charming place. Artisan shops, nestled beside cafes with clever names, locals nodding politely as she passed. Unlike the tourist traps she'd visited for other assignments, Pine Ridge felt authentic, if a bit secretive. Following Eamon's directions, she found Marcus's workshop on the edge of town, a spacious, timber-frame building with large windows and a sign reading simply, "Harlow Woodworking." The door was open, and inside, Marcus was bent over a massive slab of walnut, running his hand along its edge with such focus he didn't notice her enter. Olivia took a moment to observe the space. Immaculate tools, organized with precision, sketches, pinned to a board, and furniture pieces in various stages of completion. What caught her eye most, however, was the quality of the work. Even her untrained eye could see these weren't ordinary pieces, but functional art of the highest caliber. "Your work is beautiful," she said finally. Marcus looked up, surprise giving way to a warm smile. "Olivia, good to see you in drier circumstances." He set down his tools and wiped his hands on a cloth. "How's the car?" "That's actually why I'm here. It's going to be stuck in the shop for at least 5 days, and I was hoping to salvage my photography trip. Eamon mentioned you might know where I could find the red wolves I came to photograph." Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Interest, perhaps, or amusement. Did he now? Eamon should know better than to volunteer other people's time. "I'd pay you, of course," Olivia added quickly. "As a guide." Marcus laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his serious face. I'm not a guide, but I do know where those wolves den. They're extremely shy. Most locals never see them in a lifetime. I've photographed snow leopards in the Himalayas and jaguars in the Amazon, Olivia countered. Patience is my specialty. Marcus studied her for a long moment, then nodded. All right, I can take you to a few spots, but I've got a commission to finish first. He gestured to the walnut slab. Tomorrow morning, 5 a.m. Wear layers and good boots. As Olivia turned to leave, her gaze fell on a framed magazine article on the wall, the only personal touch in the otherwise utilitarian space. The headline read, Innovations Transforming Sustainable Architecture, and though she couldn't see the full text, something about it seemed significant. That evening, Olivia sat in the lodge's small library, uploading yesterday's storm photos to her laptop. A woman with silver-streaked auburn hair sat down across from her, introducing herself as Josephine Winters, the town librarian. You're staying a while then? Josephine asked, eyeing Olivia's equipment. At least until my car's fixed. I'm hoping to photograph the red wolves while I'm here. With Marcus as your guide? When Olivia looked surprised, Josephine smiled. Small town. News travels fast. You're lucky. Marcus doesn't usually take to strangers so quickly. What's his story? Olivia asked, curiosity getting the better of her. He seems different from what I'd expect in a small-town craftsman. Josephine considered her words carefully. Marcus Harlow contains multitudes, as they say. He left Pine Ridge years ago, Ivy League education, then disappeared into the corporate world. Most assumed he'd never come back, but 3 years ago he returned and built that workshop. Keeps to himself mostly, though he's generous when the town needs help. What brought him back? That's the mystery, isn't it? Some say heartbreak, others say burnout. All I know is he seems more at peace making furniture than he ever did as a child. Before Olivia could probe further, the lodge door opened and Marcus himself walked in, carrying a stack of books. He nodded to Josephine, then approached their table. These might help you understand what we're looking for tomorrow, he said, placing the books before Olivia. They were detailed guides to the region's ecosystem and wildlife. As he turned to leave, his phone rang. He answered with a curt, Harlow, and his demeanor instantly changed, straightening his posture, his voice taking on an authority that hadn't been there before. The board can't move forward without the environmental impact assessment. No. That timeline isn't acceptable. I don't care what Jensen thinks, we're not cutting corners on this. He stepped outside to continue the call, but not before Olivia caught the look Josephine gave her, knowing and slightly amused. Just a craftsman, Olivia murmured. Later that night, as Olivia researched the wolves, her curiosity led her to search Marcus Harlow online. The results were sparse but intriguing. Mentions in architectural journals, a patent for sustainable building materials, and a single photo of a much younger Marcus shaking hands with a renowned tech billionaire. The more Olivia learned about Marcus Harlow, the less she understood. The simple carpenter who'd pulled her from a flooded road was becoming more complex by the hour, and Olivia Reed had always been drawn to complexities. As she prepared her gear for the early morning, she wondered what other mysteries awaited her in these misty mountains, and why the thought of unraveling them filled her with such unexpected anticipation. The gallery opening. 3 days of dawn hikes through the Blue Ridge wilderness had yielded more than Olivia could have hoped for. On her memory cards were dozens of shots that would make her editor weep with joy. A mated pair of red wolves with their 3 cubs, playing in a secluded meadow as morning mist swirled around them. The lighting, the composition, the rare, intimate moments of these elusive creatures. It was the kind of photographic sequence that could define a career, and she owed it all to Marcus. You have a gift, she told him as they made their way back to town on the 3rd afternoon. Most trackers I've worked with would have scared them off. Marcus shrugged, but she caught the ghost of a smile. I spent my childhood learning to move quietly through these forests. some skills you never lose. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, their rapport having evolved from cautious to companionable over their days together. Marcus had proven to be knowledgeable not just about the local terrain, but about conservation policy, habitat, preservation, and the complex interplay between development and environmental protection. Their conversations ranged from photography techniques to philosophy, each exchange revealing new facets of his character that intrigued her further. "My exhibition opens next Friday in Philadelphia," Olivia said suddenly. "These wolf photos will be featured. You should come." The invitation surprised them both. Marcus paused mid-stride, his expression unreadable. "I don't do cities much these days," he said finally. "But the exhibition is about wilderness preservation, showing people the beauty they might never see otherwise. Your insights would add value to the conversations." He seemed on the verge of declining again when his phone buzzed. Reading the message, his expression shifted subtly, something Olivia had learned to recognize as his other life intruding. "Actually," he said slowly, "I may have business in Philadelphia next week. I'll try to make it." They parted ways at the edge of town, and Olivia returned to the lodge to find her car had been repaired ahead of schedule. Despite having the freedom to leave, she found herself lingering in Pine Ridge for 2 more days, telling herself it was to capture more footage, but knowing it had more to do with the quiet carpenter and his mysteries. The Lockhart Gallery in downtown Philadelphia hummed with the elegant energy of opening night. Olivia's exhibition, Vanishing Wilderness, transformed the white-walled space into a journey through North America's most endangered habitats. Her Red Wolf series formed the dramatic centerpiece, large format prints that brought viewers face-to-face with creatures most would never encounter in the wild. Dressed in a simple black dress that contrasted with her usual field attire, Olivia navigated through clusters of art collectors, conservation donors, and journalists. She answered questions about exposure settings and wolf behavior with practiced ease, but her eyes kept drifting to the entrance. "These photographs are extraordinary," said a woman in her 60s, adorned with tasteful jewelry and an air of influence. "The intimacy you've captured, it's as if these wolves invited you into their world." "I had an exceptional guide," Olivia replied, "someone who understood their patterns and habitats better than anyone I've worked with." "High praise from someone with your experience," the woman noted. "I'm Regina Blackwood, by the way. My foundation focuses on habitat preservation." The name registered immediately. Regina Blackwood headed one of the largest environmental foundations in the country. Her support could amplify the impact of Olivia's work tenfold. "It's an honor to meet you, Ms. Blackwood. Your foundation's work in the Pacific Northwest has been groundbreaking. Call me Regina, please, and I'd love to discuss featuring your wolf series in our next campaign. We're focusing on predator conservation this year." As they exchanged contact information, the gallery's atmosphere subtly shifted. Heads turned toward the entrance, conversations quieted momentarily before resuming with increased energy. Olivia looked up to see what had caused the reaction and nearly dropped her champagne flute. Marcus stood in the doorway, but not the Marcus she knew from Pine Ridge. This man wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that transformed his normally rugged frame into something formidable and elegant. His hair was styled differently, and the casual confidence of the woods had been replaced by a commanding presence that drew attention without seeking it. More shocking were the people greeting him. CEOs she recognized from magazine covers, environmental scientists whose papers she'd referenced, policymakers whose decisions shaped conservation efforts nationwide. Regina followed her gaze. "Ah, Marcus finally arrived. I was hoping he'd make it." "You know him?" Olivia managed to ask. "Everyone in conservation and sustainable development knows Marcus Harlow," Regina said, surprised by the question. "Harlow, innovations revolutionized green building materials, and his venture fund has backed nearly every significant environmental technology breakthrough in the last decade." She studied Olivia's face. But you didn't know that, did you? Before Olivia could respond, Marcus spotted her across the room. Something flickered in his eyes. Apprehension, perhaps, but he made his way toward her with determined strides. "Your photographs are remarkable," he said simply, the same appreciation in his voice as when he'd commented on a sunrise in the mountains. "They capture exactly what's at stake." "Thank you," Olivia replied, struggling to reconcile the mountain guide with this influential figure everyone seemed to know. "I'm glad you could make it." Regina excused herself tactfully, leaving them in a pocket of relative privacy amidst the crowd. "You might have mentioned you're some kind of environmental tech mogul," Olivia said quietly. "Would it have mattered?" "In the woods," Marcus countered. "Would it have helped us find those wolves?" "That's not the point, isn't it? You saw me as a craftsman, a guide who knew the mountains. That's real. The rest—" He gestured vaguely at the room, at himself in his expensive suit, "is just context." A journalist approached, asking for a photo of them together. "The photographer and her subject expert," she explained. As they posed, Olivia felt the warmth of Marcus's hand at the small of her back, steady and familiar despite the unfamiliar setting. Throughout the evening, Olivia watched Marcus navigate the social currents with effortless grace. He deflected questions about his business ventures, instead directing conversations toward her photography and the conservation issues it highlighted. Yet each interaction revealed another piece of the puzzle. Mentions of his company's headquarters in Seattle, references to board meetings and investment decisions, the deference with which environmental leaders treated his opinions. Later, as the crowd thinned, they found themselves by the exhibition of wolf photographs. "Why didn't you tell me?" Olivia asked finally. Marcus studied the largest image. A wolf standing alert at the edge of a misty clearing, its eyes seeming to look directly into the camera, into the viewer's soul. "In Pine Ridge, I'm just Marcus who builds furniture and knows the woods," he said. "It's the only place where that's true." He turned to her, his expression more vulnerable than she'd seen before. "When people know about the money, about Harlow, innovations, everything changes. Their perception, their expectations, even their authenticity. You thought I'd treat you differently? Everyone does, eventually." The simple truth in his statement silenced her protests. Looking around at the influential crowd, at the way people glanced at Marcus with calculation and interest, she began to understand his retreat to the mountains. As the gallery closed, Marcus offered to walk her to her hotel. The Philadelphia. Night was cool, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement from an earlier rain. "Your work deserves to be seen," he said, breaking their thoughtful silence. "Regina's foundation can give it the platform it needs to make real change." "Is that why you came? To connect me with your influential friends?" Marcus stopped walking, turning to face her. "I came because you invited me. Because for 3 days in the mountains you saw me, not my wealth or my companies or my connections, just me. And I wanted to see if that could survive this." He gestured to the city around, them to the world he usually inhabited. The revelation of his true identity hung between them, altering the landscape of their connection as surely as a storm transforms a familiar path. Olivia didn't know if she felt betrayed by his omission or grateful for the unfiltered interaction it had allowed. All she knew was that the Marcus before her now, powerful, connected, wealthy beyond imagination, seemed both familiar and foreign, like a photograph slightly out of focus. "I don't know what happens next," she admitted. "Neither do I," he replied, and the honesty in his voice reminded her of the man who'd pulled her from a flooded road, the essential Marcus beneath the shifting external layers. As they reached her hotel, the doorman recognized Marcus immediately, adding another small confirmation to the reality she was still processing. Standing in the warm glow of the entrance, Olivia faced a crossroads, to retreat into the safety of distance or to step forward into unfamiliar territory. "Would you like to have breakfast tomorrow?" she asked finally. before you fly back to wherever billionaires go after slumming it as wilderness guides? The tension in his shoulders eased slightly, and the smile that touched his lips was purely Marcus, the one she'd come to know in Pine Ridge. "I'd like that," he said, "though I should warn you, I have a board meeting at noon." "Then we'd better make it an early breakfast," she replied, stepping into the hotel with one last glance over her shoulder, leaving Marcus standing on the threshold between their two worlds. Truths and distances. The weeks following the Philadelphia exhibition unfolded in a blur of contrasts for Olivia. Her wolf photographs garnered national attention, with Regina, Blackwood's foundation featuring them prominently in a conservation campaign. Publications that had previously ignored her pitches now pursued her for interviews. Her agent reported a surge of interest in her broader portfolio. Professional success should have felt satisfying. Instead, Olivia found herself distracted, her thoughts continually drifting to a quiet mountain town and the man who'd revealed himself to be so much more than he appeared. Their breakfast in Philadelphia had been surprisingly normal, almost defiantly so. They'd avoided talking about his wealth or status, focusing instead on her exhibition's reception and the conservation impact she hoped to achieve. Yet the knowledge hung between them, altering the texture of their interaction in subtle ways. At the end, Marcus had handed her a business card, sleek, minimalist, with only his name and a phone number. "If you're ever back in Pine Ridge," he'd said simply. She'd tucked it into her wallet, unsure if she would use it. Now, 6 weeks later, Olivia sat in her Minneapolis apartment, sorting through equipment for her next assignment in Yellowstone. Her phone chimed with a message from Regina Blackwood, "Attending the Environmental Innovation Summit in Seattle next week. Your Wolf series will be featured in my keynote. Would value your presence if available. All expenses covered. Seattle, headquarters of Harlow Innovations." The connection wasn't subtle. Against her better judgment, Olivia accepted. The summit was held in a stunning glass and timber convention center overlooking Puget Sound. Its organic architecture and living green walls embodied the sustainable principles being discussed within its halls. Olivia learned from the program that the building itself was a Harlow Innovations design, utilizing materials and systems that had revolutionized green construction. After Regina's keynote, which positioned Olivia's photography as a powerful tool for conservation advocacy, she found herself approached by the summit's organizer, a polished woman named Vivian Taylor. "Ms. Reed, your work has made quite an impression," Vivian said. "Several of our corporate partners have expressed interest in commissioning similar projects for their sustainability reports." "I'm selective about commercial work," Olivia replied carefully. "Of course. Perhaps you'd discuss possibilities over dinner tonight? The board is hosting a private event at Harlow's residence." The invitation caught Olivia off guard. "Marcus, Harlow's residence?" Vivian nodded, a hint of curiosity in her expression. "Yes, spectacular place on Bainbridge Island. Architectural Digest featured it last year. Completely self-sustaining, built into the hillside to minimize environmental impact. The view alone is worth the ferry ride." Curiosity won out over hesitation, and that evening Olivia found herself on a ferry crossing to Bainbridge Island. The April sunset painted the water in shades of gold and rose, Mount Rainier visible in the distance, like a sentinel watching over the sound. A driver met her at the terminal, guiding her to a discreet, electric vehicle. They wound through forested roads before turning onto a nearly invisible drive marked only by a simple H on a stone post. Marcus's home was nothing like she'd imagined. Rather than the ostentatious mansion billionaires typically favored, it was a thoughtful integration of architecture and landscape, a series of interconnected structures that followed the natural contours of the land, their walls alternating between glass and living surfaces covered with native plants. The structure seemed to emerge from the hillside rather than imposing upon it. Inside, about 30 guests mingled in an open space where The distinction between indoors and outdoors blurred. One entire wall was glass, framing a panoramic view of the Sound and the Seattle skyline beyond. Despite its size, the space felt intimate, warmed by reclaimed wood and subtle lighting. Olivia spotted Marcus immediately, engaged in conversation, with Regina and two men she recognized as tech industry leaders. He wore a casual but impeccably tailored outfit that struck a perfect balance between host and businessman. This was his natural habitat, she realized, where the carpenter and the billionaire existed in the same space. He noticed her almost immediately, excusing himself to make his way toward her. Something in his expression, relief perhaps, or pleasure, made her heart beat faster. "You came," he said simply. "Regina can be persuasive," Olivia replied. "Impressive place. It's home." He gestured toward the gathering. "Though not usually this crowded. Can I show you around? Before dinner?" Away from the crowd, Marcus guided her through spaces that revealed more about him than weeks in Pine Ridge had done. A workshop filled with tools similar to those in his mountain studio. A library whose shelves held volumes on everything from forestry to quantum physics. A small gallery where photographs of wilderness, some her own, hung alongside artifacts from indigenous cultures. "You collect photography?" she asked, studying a striking image of the northern lights. "I collect perspectives," he corrected. "Ways of seeing the world I might miss on my own." They ended on a deck overlooking a garden that transitioned seamlessly into the surrounding forest. The evening air carried the scent of cedar and salt water. "Why didn't you tell me?" Olivia asked finally, giving voice to the question that had haunted her for weeks. "About all of this. About who you really are." Marcus leaned against the railing, his gaze on the distant water. "Because for 3 days in those mountains, I wasn't Marcus Harlow, billionaire entrepreneur. I was just a man who knew the forests and could help you find what you were looking for." He turned to face her. "Do you know how rare that is for me? To be seen without the filter of wealth and power?" "So it was selfish," she said, more statement than accusation. "Yes," he admitted. "But it was also the most honest interaction I've had in years." A server appeared, informing them that dinner was about to be served. As they returned to the gathering, Olivia observed Marcus in this element, commanding yet approachable, using his influence to connect people whose collaboration might benefit environmental causes. It was a different kind of power than she'd witnessed in Pine Ridge, where his authority came from knowledge of the land rather than economic leverage. During dinner, Olivia found herself seated between Regina and a conservation biologist whose work she admired. The conversation flowed around sustainable development, habitat preservation, and the intersection of technology and environmental protection. Marcus, at the head of the table, guided the discussion with subtle expertise. "He's different with you," Regina murmured at one point, following Olivia's gaze toward their host. "More present. Less guarded." "We barely know each other," Olivia protested. Regina's knowing smile suggested she thought otherwise. "Marcus has funded my foundation for 8 years. In all that time, I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." After dessert, as conversations fractured into smaller groups, Marcus approached her again. "Walk with me, there's something I want to show you." He led her to a separate structure set apart from the main house. A glass-walled studio space with a spectacular view of the water. Inside, to Olivia's surprise, stood a large table crafted from a single slab of walnut, its surface gleaming in the low light. "You made this," she realized, recognizing the craftsmanship from his Pine Ridge workshop. "It's where I work when I'm here," he said. "My designs, my ideas for the company, they all start at this table. It's beautiful." She ran her hand along the smooth edge, feeling the connection to the Marcus she'd first known. "Olivia." His voice had softened. I want to apologize for not being transparent with you. You deserved the whole truth." She studied his face, seeing genuine regret. "Why Pine Ridge? With everything you have here, why spend time in a small mountain town building furniture? Because in Seattle, in boardrooms and investment meetings, I'm defined by what I own and what I control. In Pine Ridge, I'm defined by what I create with my hands and how I interact with the land." He moved to stand beside her, their shoulders almost touching. "Both are real parts of me. I'm just not sure how to reconcile them." The vulnerability in his admission touched something in Olivia. She understood compartmentalization, her own. Life was split between the solitary focus of wilderness photography and the social performance of exhibitions and interviews. "I'm flying to Yellowstone tomorrow," she said, the abrupt change of subject surprising them both. 4 weeks documenting wolf and bison interactions. His expression shifted, a careful neutrality replacing openness. "Important work." "It is." She hesitated. "I'm not sure what this is, Marcus. Whatever connection we formed in Pine Ridge, it was based on a partial truth. And this," she gestured around them, to the wealth and influence evident in every detail. "It's a world I don't belong in." As she worked, Marcus moved quietly around her, anticipating her needs as he had during their first days together. Holding a reflector to balance the light, steadying a long lens as she switched equipment. The easy partnership they'd developed, in spring, reasserted itself naturally. "Beautiful," she murmured, reviewing a particularly striking image of a wolf silhouetted against the autumn foliage. "Yes," Marcus agreed, though his gaze was fixed on her rather than the viewfinder. Later, as they descended the trail with the morning's shoot complete, Olivia considered how far they'd come from that rain-soaked night when Marcus had pulled her. Car from rising floodwaters. "We're different people than we were last spring," she observed. "Or perhaps we're just more completely ourselves," he suggested. "Less compartmentalized." At the trail's end, Marcus's truck waited alongside Olivia's. Rental car. Neither moved immediately toward their vehicles. "I'm hosting a small dinner tonight," Marcus said. "At my place here, not the workshop, the actual house. I don't think you've seen it. Nothing formal, just Eamon, Josephine, a few local friends. Would you join us?" The invitation represented more than a meal. It was an opening into the integrated life Marcus was creating, where the billionaire entrepreneur and the mountain craftsman coexisted without contradiction. "I'd like that," Olivia replied. That evening, Olivia discovered that Marcus's Pine Ridge home was neither a rustic cabin nor a mansion, but a thoughtfully designed residence that embodied the same principles as his Seattle property on a more intimate scale. Nestled into the hillside with expansive views of the mountains, it featured his furniture throughout, each piece revealing the care and craftsmanship she'd first noticed in his workshop. The dinner gathering was warm and unpretentious. Eamon telling outrageous stories about local legends, Josephine discussing her latest literary discoveries, a local ecologist sharing updates on wildlife populations. Marcus moved among his guests with easy hospitality, his manner neither that of a corporate titan nor a reclusive artisan, but something authentically his own. Olivia found herself drawn into conversations about conservation challenges, her photographs serving as reference points for discussions about habitat protection and species recovery. Her expertise was valued here as much as in professional settings, but the context felt more personal, more connected to the landscapes she documented. As the evening wound down and guests departed, Marcus invited her to stay for a nightcap on the deck. The autumn night was clear, stars brilliant above the dark silhouettes of mountains. "When I pulled your car from that flooded road," Marcus said, swirling amber liquid in his glass, "I had no idea how thoroughly you would disrupt my carefully separated worlds." "Is that a complaint?" Olivia asked, smiling. "An observation." He turned to face her, his expression thoughtful. "I've spent years believing I had to choose between worlds. that I could either be the successful entrepreneur wielding influence or the craftsman finding peace in creation. Never both, at least not authentically. And now? Now I'm considering the possibility that integration is more powerful than compartmentalization. He set his glass down, moving closer. That a life doesn't have to be divided to be genuine. The mountain air carried the scent of pine and wood smoke, a reminder of their first days together searching for wolves in the spring mist. So much had changed since then, yet the essential connection remained, deepened by understanding rather than diminished by truth. "What exactly are you proposing, Marcus Harlow?" Olivia asked, her voice soft but direct. "A collaboration," he replied, his eyes holding hers. "Personal and professional. Your eye for capturing what's at risk, my resources for developing solutions. Your immersion in the wild places that need protection, my access to the policymakers who can ensure it. Different strengths applied to shared values." "And the personal side of this collaboration?" she prompted. Instead of answering with words, Marcus closed the distance between them. His kiss was both question and statement, tentative yet confident, much like the man himself. When they separated, Olivia studied his face in the moonlight, seeing not the billionaire or the craftsman, but simply Marcus, complex and genuine. "I have the Blackwood Foundation interview next week," she said, "and the cabin I mentioned goes on the market officially on Thursday." "I know the listing agent," he offered. "I could arrange a private showing tomorrow." "Using your billionaire influence already?" she teased. "Using local connections," he corrected. "Small town, remember? News travels fast." Olivia laughed, recognizing the echo of Josephine's words from months earlier. "And what news will be traveling about us after tonight?" "That depends on what story we decide to write," Marcus said, taking her hand. "But I'm hoping it's one about finding authenticity across different worlds, about recognizing that wealth can be measured in many currencies. Money, yes, but also knowledge, connection, purpose." "That sounds like a story worth telling," Olivia agreed, leaning into him as they gazed out at the mountains that had brought them together. In the valley below, somewhere in the darkness, the wolves they'd photographed were moving through their territory, wild and free, unaware of human distinctions of wealth or status, attuned only to the authentic nature of their surroundings. There was wisdom in that simplicity, Olivia thought, in recognizing what was genuine beyond appearances, in valuing substance over circumstance. As midnight approached, Olivia and Marcus remained on the deck, planning not separate futures, but a shared one, where her work documenting environmental challenges would inform his innovations addressing them, where his resources could amplify her conservation advocacy, where the boundaries between their worlds would blur and eventually dissolve. Not because either had changed who they fundamentally were, but because they had recognized in each other something that transcended external trappings. A shared vision, a compatible purpose, and a connection that had begun on a rain-soaked mountain road, when neither was looking for anything more than shelter from the storm.